You don't have to have a workshop full of tools to make your own speaker box. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do it with basic tools that most people probably have lying around. And the adventure starts with a cheap circular saw.
I'm going to start by ripping a few inches off the long edge of this big piece of material. You need a circular saw to make straight cuts. A lot of people have a corded circular saw just lying around. If you don't have one, then don't spend a ton of money on one, and save your money for later when you're ready to upgrade to a cordless model. See if you can borrow one from a friend. If you can find a used one, make sure you buy it cheap so you'll have money for a new blade. If you want to do this even cheaper, you can make straight cuts with a jigsaw, but it will be slow and frustrating.
Your cuts will be a lot straighter if you've got a way to guide your saw. I recommend the Craig Rip Cut.
If you want to save a few bucks, you can get a clamp-on edge guide, or just use a straight piece of plywood as an edge guide. But this jig will save you a ton of time setting up your cuts and measuring your cuts, and it will give you more accurate, repeatable results.
Keep watching and I'll show you how to set up a Craig Rip Cut.
Here's what I mean by that. Right here I'm cutting out two 6-inch strips. These are for the top and the bottom of the enclosure, and the rip cut ensures that they're going to be the exact same size. Then I'm going to move on to a 12-inch piece that I ripped earlier. With the jig still set to 6 inches, I cut out the end pieces and the center braces. I don't have to set up for the cut. I don't have to move a clamping jig around. I just set the rip cut to 6 inches and I make my cuts. Now before you make any cuts, you're going to need a box design and a cut list, and it's probably a good idea to build a cut sheet as well. Keep watching and I'll show you how I like to design enclosures and make a cut list.
Now that your straight cuts are done, you're going to need to cut some circles. For that, you're going to need a drill with a big drill bit and a jigsaw.
Start by marking out your circle. Here I'm using scrap wood and a pair of screws. Remember that the radius is half of the diameter, so if you need a 9.5 inch cutout, then these two screws need to be 4.75 inches apart. Then grab a large drill bit, a 1/2 inch in this case, and make a hole for the jigsaw blade. Follow the mark and cut out the hole. Again, don't get an expensive jigsaw. Save your money for when you're ready to upgrade to cordless tools. If you're a big spender, go ahead and get a cordless jigsaw, preferably one that uses the same battery as your drill.
If you've never done this before, I recommend that you practice on some scrap.
At this point, I like to make sure that my speakers are going to fit in the cutouts and mock up the entire box so that I know all of my cuts are right before I start assembling.
While you're at it, go ahead and cut a hole for your terminal cup.
Don't put the jigsaw away yet, we've got some more work to do with it. If you remember, we cut out some extra pieces to use as bracing. I've scribed a 1-inch line on those pieces, and now I'm going to use the drill and jigsaw method to cut out my braces.
Okay guys, we've had a little mistake. I've got a little bit of an oopsie here. Let me turn the camera around and show you what I mean. All right, the cat's having a good time hanging out with the box. And what you're going to notice here is I started to mock the box up, and I've got this big overhang right here that runs the full length of this board. If you're afraid to make mistakes, you should go buy your own box instead of building it. Now that I've got that straightened out, it's time for some wood glue. I buy it by the gallon.
I'm going to grab my speed square, some people call it a carpenter's square, and I'm going to scribe some lines on the box. What I'm doing here is I'm marking where the screws are going to go. When we build subwoofer enclosures, or any speaker enclosure for that matter, the wood glue is what does the work. It's what holds the box together. But we need some way to hold the box together until the glue sets up. And in this case, we're going to be using wood screws. You can also use brad nails, or you can just clamp everything together if you'd like. The thing to remember is that if you miss the wood, the screw will not do anything for you. So it's very important to take a few seconds to scribe a few lines on your box. I strongly advise getting an assortment of clamps, including some corner clamps like the green ones that I have right here. I use clamps like extra hands to help me line everything up and hold the parts in place while I secure the parts with some type of mechanical fastener. Now you can get away without the clamps, but they make life a whole lot easier, especially if you're working out in the shop alone. After everything is lined up, I slather on the wood glue and I tighten down the clamps. Now, if you've got a ton of time on your hands, you can assemble the entire box with clamps and wood glue. You just got to clamp a piece together and then wait 30 minutes for the wood to set up and dry before you unclamp it and move on to the next piece. Sometimes when I'm building an enclosure, I'll do it this way and spend the entire week working on the enclosure. I'll do a glue up and a clamp up and let it dry overnight and then come back the next evening and work on the next couple of pieces.
If you have several dozen clamps, you can do it all at once.
Here I'm using my carpenter square so I can evenly space out my screws. Since you already need to buy a drill and drill bits for cutting out your circles, we're going to use screws to hold our box together while the glue dries. You will need to pre-drill your holes.
Don't skip this step.
Most box builders use MDF, and MDF will split if you drive in a screw without pre-drilling the hole. Plywood is a bit more forgiving, but pre-drill anyway. I'm using a countersink bit here, but you can just swap out a larger bit to make a countersink.
What kind of screw should you use?
For MDF, you want a coarse screw with a flared head. Drywall screws are fine, just keep in mind that they break easy. Slowly work your way around the box. Now here on the ends, I'm going to recess my end pieces into the box about 1/4 of an inch. This is going to make it easier to apply carpet later.
For the carpet, I just use spray adhesive out of a can.
The hardest part of wrapping a box is the ends. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. You just spray some adhesive on the carpet, then spray some adhesive on the box. Wait a few minutes following the instructions on the can, and stick the carpet to the box. Again, the difficult part here is the edges, and I found this utility knife in my local Home Depot. I've never seen one like this before. The back of the knife has this metal end, and I thought that would be perfect for pushing down the carpet into that groove, and I don't need two tools, so I'm constantly putting one down trying to find where the other tool is at. I'll make sure to give you a link to this tool down in the description. If you would like to see a complete video on how to carpet a subwoofer box, let me know down in the comments. The next step is to install the terminal cup. You'll need some decent speaker wire, some wire cutters, and some wire strippers. If you're careful, you can strip the wire with a utility knife. You can attach the wire on the inside of the terminal with a crimp connector.
So in addition to a cutter and some strippers, you're going to need some crimpers.
The terminal cup just screws in. As always, make sure you pre-drill the holes. When installing the subwoofer, start by connecting your wires. This one right here has these awesome push terminals. Next, you want to screw down the subwoofer. I like to start with 2 screws to hold it steady, then pre-drill the rest of the holes, and then drive in the screws.
Click this video right here to learn how to set up the Craig Rip Cut. Click right here to learn how to design a subwoofer box and set up all your cuts. Or you can hit the subscribe button and I'll see you on the next adventure. And when you're done, have a shot of bourbon. You've earned it. This is hard work.